Hi, my name is Gavin Chambers.
I'm Megan Campbell.
I'm Asher Colton.
I'm Cooper Chambers.
And we're here to give a History 201 lecture on the triangular trade.
First, we're going to give you a brief description of it.
Second, we're going to give you vocabulary words.
Last, we're going to give a description of each leg in the triangular trade.
Triangular trade is a term for the trade route set in the Atlantic Ocean between England, Europe, Africa, the Americas, and the West Indies. Triangular trade is a multilateral system for which one company pays for its imports from one country by exports to another country. This trade system involves three legs. In the first leg, ships from England would go to Africa to exchange a variety of goods in return for slaves. In the second, ships from Africa would go to the American colonies to transport slaves back to America, and this is also known as the Middle Passage. In the third leg, ships would then return to England, and the triangular trade process would restart all over again.
Number 1, triangular trade routes. Triangular trade routes are a multilateral system of trading in which a country pays for its imports for one country by its exports to another. Number 2, mother country. Mother country is a country in relation to its colonies. Number 3, agriculture. Agriculture is the science or practice of farming, including cultivation of the soil for the growing of crops and the rearing of animals to provide food, wool, and other products.
Number 4 is import. An import is where you bring goods or services into a country from abroad or for sale. Number 5 is export. Export is where you send goods or services to another country for sale.
Number 6 on our vocab list is Middle Passage, and the Middle Passage is a sea journey undertaken by slave ships from West Africa to the West Indies. Number 7 is indentured servant. An indentured servant is a person who came to America and was placed under a contract to work over a period of time, which was usually 7 years, especially during the 17th to the 19th centuries. Number 8 is mercantilism. Mercantilism is the belief in the benefits of profitable trading, also known as commercialism.
Number 9 on our list is raw materials, the basic material from which a product is made. Next is finished goods. Finished goods are materials or products which have received the final increments of value through manufacturing or processing operations, in which they are being held inventory for delivery, sale, or use.
From England, the goods that needed to be brought into the colonies included manufactured products such as guns, cloth, furniture, and tools. Other items such as tea and spices were also sent to the colonies. To England, the goods that needed to be brought consisted of raw materials from natural resources found in the New World such as timber, fur, iron, fish, whale oil, sugar, tobacco, rice, and cotton. Rum was one of the few finished goods that were sent to England. In Leg 1, ships from England would go to Africa carrying iron products, cloth, trinkets, and beads, guns, and ammunition. The ships traded these goods for slaves, gold, and pepper. The positive effects for Europe directly related to the economic benefit from having the new goods inserted into the market. One of the negative impacts of the triangular trade on European nations is the legacy of slave trading and colonialism. The awareness of slave trading also led to the rise of abolition movements in Europe that sought to end slavery. Slave ships from Britain left ports like London, Liverpool, and Bristol for West Africa, carrying goods that had been made in Britain. In West African coasts, these goods would be traded for men, women, and children who had been captured by slave traders or bought from African chiefs. The triangular trade had several notable impacts on Europe, including massive profit opportunities, increased access to raw goods, more political power and colonization outside Europe, and the rise of Industrial Revolution. Creating shipping lines to Africa and the Americas boosted Europe's shipping industry, providing jobs and income. As the amount of product being imported and exported from Europe grew, so did the number of ports, ships, and workers. European nations were able to more easily colonize African countries, for example, as they already had an established way to get supplies and transact business. The profit the countries received from the triangular trade helped them build their empires, which affected the political and social fabric of many countries both in and out of Europe. Additional impacts on Europe. European factories formed to make this more manufactured goods. The growth in technology and business ventures was also largely possible due to the money received from the triangular trade, made by selling goods and selling slaves. Without the triangular trade providing cheap raw materials, it's possible that the Industrial Revolution would have happened more slowly or focused on different types of manufactured goods in different areas of Europe. While the triangular trade isn't the only cause of the Industrial Revolution, it's likely it played its part.
Okay, I had Africa, and it's leg 2 of the triangular trade. It's goods to Africa and goods from Africa. Goods to Africa was from England. Africa got iron products, cloth, beads, copper, guns, and ammunition. And then from Africa was mainly slaves, which we'll talk about the Middle Passage. And that was spices, gold, ivory, and feathers, which were all destined for Europe via other trade routes. The Middle Passage was a forced voyage of enslaved Africans from Africa across the Atlantic Ocean to the New World. Fully loaded with its human cargo, the ship set sail for the Americas, where the slaves were exchanged for sugar, tobacco, or some other product. No African knew what to expect aboard these ships because Africans who were on the Middle Passage and made it to the plantations of the New World did not return to their homeland to tell what had happened. Aboard the slave ships, slaves were branded with hot irons and restrained with shackles. On a good day, this journey took up to 3 weeks. Throughout, slaves lived with less than 5 feet of headroom and throughout a large portion of the deck. Sleeping shelves cut the limited amount of headroom in half. Although lack of standing headroom was the least of the slaves' problems, with 300 to 400 people packed in a tiny area with little ventilation and in some cases not even enough space to place buckets for human waste, disease was prevalent. Alada Equino was an African captured as a boy who later wrote an autobiography. According to him, the closeness of the place and the heat of the climate added to the amount of people in the ship, and it was so crowded that they barely had enough room to turn themselves, and it almost suffocated them. It produced bad air, and it was unfit for respiration from a variety of loathsome smells and brought on sickness among the slaves, of which many died. Faced with the nightmarish conditions of the voyage and the unknown future that lay beyond, many Africans preferred to die, but the choice of suicide was taken away from them. From the captain's point of view, his human cargo was extremely valuable and had to be kept alive, and if possible, uninjured. A slave who tried to starve himself or herself was tortured. If torture didn't work, the slave was force-fed with the help of a contraption called a speculum orum, which held the mouth open. Despite the captain's desire to keep as many slaves as possible alive, Middle Passage mortality rates were very high. Although it's difficult to determine how many Africans died on the route to the New World, it is believed that between 10 and 20% of those transported lost their lives.
In the Americas, mercantilism was a huge part of the triangular trade. Mercantilism is the idea that a nation's existence depends on the power and the power is dependent on the wealth. So in order to gain wealth, countries had to have more colonies. These colonies provided a constant source of raw materials and became markets for manufactured goods to countries that owned them or their, quote, mother country. An example of this would be the colonists would cut down trees. The trees were sent to England where craftsmen made furniture, paper, barrels, tools. Then these goods were sent back to the colonists and sold to the colonists, but the money went all the way back to England, since they were obviously the mother country. The Americas held Leg 3. For Leg 3, ships from America would take raw materials back to England. The raw materials were broken into 3 main regions. In the New England colonies, they produced shipbuilding, rum, fur, whale products, fish, wool, and flour. In the Middle colonies, they produced timber, iron ore products, agriculture, fur, and flour. Lastly, in the southern colonies, they mainly produced rice, indigo, cotton, tobacco, sugar, corn, and flax. The English would use these raw materials to make finished goods. These finished goods were then sent back to the Americas to be sold to the colonists. Some of these finished goods include furniture, clothing, tools, leather goods, weapons, paper, etc. Colonists imported much more than they exported, so the balance of trade was in England's favor.